Is now the time to buy new camera gear? When is the right time to buy a new piece of equipment? Today, let's explore that. Hey there, welcome back. Aaron here from techphotoguy.com. I am back again with Kelly Guimont here, who is a technologist, a podcaster, longtime IT industry person. And this is part two of a three-part series we're doing talking about when is the right time to buy new equipment? In part one, which I will link right up above so you can jump directly to. In part one, we talked about just kind of the adoption curve in general and when is the right time to replace your computer. Today, we're going to focus on cameras and photography gear, and that's going to be the topic here. Part three, which will be coming in the future, will be all about when is it time to replace your smartphone. So before we get to that, again, welcome, Kelly, again. Glad to have you here. Let's talk about cameras. I need a new camera every week, right?
Sure. And if you can afford that, like I said last time, I look forward to your video series on how to live the lifestyle that allows you to afford that. The thing with cameras, I'm gonna have to ask you about right. Because I don't watch them quite as closely, but with phones anyway, there's a pretty set upgrade cycle a lot of times, whether it's like on the iOS side, it's a year. On the Android side, specifically the Google phones, it's about a year. I don't know when the dramatic shifts happen in the Samsung phones, because it seems like, they're having a release event right now for a new phone from Samsung as we both as we record this and as you watch this. Samsung is introducing a new phone right now. Right. But with like camera bodies and camera lenses and things like that, I don't know if that's a yearly upgrade kind of thing, or like you don't have to worry about, once you buy one now, you don't have to worry about it for 5 or 10 years, or
cameras are kind of interesting in that they're not as predictable as smartphones, which again we'll dive into more in the subsequent video, are very predictable. Computers are somewhat predictable, I think, both on the Mac and the Windows side of things at this point, in that Apple has a cadence that it's been disrupted a little bit with the introduction of Apple Silicon, kind of requiring them to rework their entire line. But in general, for a given type of computer that Apple makes, they usually upgrade that every 18 to 24 months. On the Windows side of things, if you look at what manufacturers are doing over there as well, Dell, Hewlett Packard, things like that, same kind of thing, where they are releasing new models periodically to upgrade. Cameras are kind of in a weird spot in that the technology, the pace of the technological innovation in a camera, and when we say cameras, we're talking here about DSLRs and now interchangeable lens mirrorless cameras, which are now more popular than DSLRs. That pace of technological innovation doesn't jump as rapidly as it does, say in the camera in a smartphone. And so, there are many photographers, professional photographers, hobbyist photographers that, have used the same body for 3, 4, 5. 10 might be a stretch in the digital world because, 10 years, there's a lot of innovation in that period of time. But, they definitely don't need to be upgraded as often as computer gear. And the other big thing with cameras is when we're talking about upgrades, normally we're talking about upgrading kind of within the same ecosystem, right? So if you are into if you're a Canon person and you use the Canon system, you have Canon lenses and accessories that are designed to work with your Canon system. Just because Sony releases some new whiz bang thing, you're not going to just go grab that because it's awesome immediately, because it won't work with your Canon system, or vice versa, or if you use Nikon or whatever that may be. And so as we look at innovation and upgrades with cameras, the big thing that I always come back to is, are you hitting a limitation with your current camera? Is there a photographic situation that you want to make better pictures that you can't do, or that you're having to jump through a lot of hoops to do, right? So, as a professional event photographer, one of the things that I've done over the last, almost 15 years now that I've been doing that, I've taken a lot of photos in a lot of really badly lit indoor places when I'm photographing conferences, trade shows, company meetings, things like that. A lot of times you're in a hotel ballroom that's in a basement that has really bad, like tungsten chandeliers from the 1970s. And it's just dark down there, right? Now, the story of how did you do that 10 years ago is different than the story of how would you do that in 2022, right? Because 10 years ago, the sensors in the digital cameras could only do so much with low light performance before the image quality really went just to crap.
Yeah.
And you needed, and so you would have to use supplemental lighting, whether that be a speed light or lights on light stands or, things like that to get usable images.
But it was a whole situation to do that. Like you had to bring stuff. You had to see if you had a friend that would come with you and, loads of gear, loads of setup, loads of load out, yeah.
And now you fast forward to our current times and it's like, wow, I mean, the mirrorless camera bodies from, and the DSLRs, from anybody, right? Canon, Nikon, Sony, Olympus, Panasonic, any of them, the high ISO performance of the current sensors is really good, right? And so there are a lot of situations where, I can crank the ISO to 1600, 3200 and it's no big deal. I can make an image in a dark environment and get a good exposure. And so that would be an example where if I was still using my gear from 10 years ago, like it wouldn't be able to do that. So if it can't do that, get newer gear. The other area, so if you can't do something is one thing.
Part of that I would say is also knowing what you can do, because 10 years ago, maybe you wished that was a thing that were possible, that you could set it to 1600, 3200 and get anything resembling an actual image at the end of that process. And, 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing. And now it actually is. And so part of it is a little bit of education about like, is it possible to do the thing I'm trying to do that my camera is failing at? Because maybe it's not, maybe that's just me wishing for a lot more than anything can do right now. So part of it is a little bit of research into like, is this a thing that I can do or not at all, let alone, yes, but just not with what you have. Okay, well, maybe I need to improve my stack.
Right. Yeah. If you're out trying to do a lot of, handheld video, for example, well, you can do that with any camera that does video, right? But you can do it better. But you can do it better if you've got, some sort of a stabilizing device, a steady cam or some sort of other, counterweighted gimbal that will help steady that camera for you. Right. And so like if handheld video is a thing that you're doing, you probably need to look at better gear for that. The question is, so I go out and I buy a steady cam. When is it time to replace that steady cam? And again, it comes back to, is it doing what I need it to do, or could I do something better if I had something new? And,
or just, I'm not going to bother because it doesn't work in some particular way, or I've tried this particular application of my gimbal or my Steadicam or something, and it's not quite what I want. And so this time I'm just not even going to try that because I know it's too much work. It's too many steps. It's a pain in the neck. What I get out of it at the end after all that work isn't useful. I can't really do anything of value with it afterward. So figuring out those things and nailing down, the parameters, if you've ever gotten to a point, this is always kind of a rule I have, is if you've gotten to a point where I have decided not to do the thing I wanted to do because of the limitation of my tools, then maybe take a closer look at your tools. That's usually the first indicator that there might be something better out there.
Yeah. And, and this leads to a point that actually might be a good one to kind of wrap up this segment on, is along those same lines. Are you at a point where doing the thing you want to do requires you to take so much stuff that weighs so much that you just don't bother taking it and doing it? Right. And the reason I mention that, and being a good segue into what will then be the third video in this series, is when we look at cameras and photography equipment, how many people are making a whole bunch of photos on their smartphone now because it's lighter weight, easier, smaller. They always have it with them, as opposed to carrying their DSLR and a flash or in their spare memory card and, you know, the
another
big camera
battery
strap and
the
another
other lens.
Yeah, right. Like
in a bag that says, "Hi, I'm a whole bunch of expensive camera equipment. Please come hassle me."
You know, so how many people know that objectively they could make better images if they had their better camera? But they choose to just use their iPhone because it's so much more convenient. I mean, I've done that as a professional photographer. Everybody has done that, I think, right? And so that's
I'm absolutely not a professional photographer, but yes, I've absolutely done the same thing and decided to leave the real camera at home in favor of, I'll just be happy with the images I get with the one that I have that fits in my pocket.
Exactly. Good deal. And so again, like I said, I think this is a great place to kind of wrap this segment on upgrading photo gear. Again, subscribe down below so that you get notified when the next video comes out. Our next video, we're going to be talking about, you know, how often should you upgrade your smartphone? When does that make sense? Again, thank you, Kelly, for the chat today.
Of course.
And hit that link down below. If you're viewing this after it publishes, I will have a link to the next video. You can get there directly. So thanks again, everyone. Take care.